What is eclipse season? When is eclipse season? Are we in it right now? What does it mean astrologically? Thank you for joining me today. I'm Gina, and today I'm excited to talk to you about what I'm often hearing referred to now as eclipse season. It's not exactly an astrology term, but it's become popular in recent years to describe the period of time around eclipses. And this period of time is especially different, potent, powerful astrologically. So it deserves a special designation. And I like the term. I like the term. So we're going to talk all about that today. We're going to talk mostly about what it means astrologically. But I just want to say and show you on this chart here, which I'm using a different chart than I normally do so that I can animate it. We can move the chart through time. And I want to show you what these eclipses look like in a chart. And then we'll get into what it means astrologically. So we have eclipse seasons either 2 or 3 times in a year, but it's rare that we have them 3 times. That would just be because it's landing at the beginning and the end of the year. Basically, we have what's known as eclipse season every 6 months or so. And every time we have an eclipse season, eclipses come in pairs. And I'll show you why in just a minute on the chart. Occasionally, we'll get 3 eclipses in one chunk within a few days of each other within one eclipse season. So usually there's 2. Occasionally there's 3 in one block, but it's rare that there's 3. The last time we had 3 eclipses in a series was in 2020. And it won't happen again until 2029. So let me show you on the chart here what I mean. This is actually a chart for right now when I'm recording this video from Saturday morning, March 8th, East Coast time. And we are in eclipse season now. Yes, we are. We are in the week before a full moon lunar eclipse. And so that is considered eclipse season. Some people say a week before, some people say 2 weeks before, the lunation before. I think it's safe to say eclipse season begins 2 weeks before the first eclipse in the series, but we feel it most actively the week before. Okay, so let me show you on the chart what this is. So all of these points on the chart are actual things that you can see in the sky, right? We have Venus, we have Chiron, we have Jupiter, we have the moon, whether they're planets or some other bodies. But something on the chart that operates really differently are what are called the nodes. So these nodes, the north node, sort of looks like headphones here, and it's in Pisces at 27 degrees of Pisces. And then across the way on that same axis is the south node, which sort of looks like a horseshoe, and it's at 27 degrees of Virgo. So these move through the chart in the opposite direction of the planets and the other points that we track because they're actually invisible points in the sky. They are points in the sky that show us where the eclipses are happening. What they show us is that I almost want to like use this because I want to show how it's an axis point, right? When this axis point, which is always rotating, it takes about 18 months to go through one sign. When it lines up with the sun and the moon, we have an eclipse. So I'm going to show you now the eclipse that we'll have on the 14th in just a few days. Okay, but this would work for any eclipse. Okay, so see, we have our sun and our moon here. When the sun and the moon are opposed in the sky, we have that full moon. The sun is across from the moon from our point of view. Remember, astrology is always from our point of view, and lighting up that moon. So we have that full moon. And when the nodes are there as well, it's an eclipse because that's what the nodes are. They show where the eclipses are happening. okay? So when we have it like this is a full moon eclipse. And if these nodes are within, they call it an orb of influence. It's like how close do they actually have to be for it to cause an eclipse? Um, because sometimes, it can be 15 degrees apart, but in the same sign. That will happen, and that wouldn't be an eclipse. That actually occurred uh, not long ago. So I use like a 10-degree orb, 8-degree orb, something like that. Sort of an 8 to 10-degree orb. And I think that this is part of why sometimes there will occasionally be debate about whether or not something's an eclipse. You'll hear astrologers debate it because it's such a tiny fraction of, what would be visible in the sky is such a tiny fraction of an eclipse of the moon, let's say, that you would hardly be able to see it. But if it's within that orb of influence. So once we have one, I don't want to go on too much about this because I want to get to the astrology. But once we have this full moon, then when you go 2 weeks later and the moon here catches up with the sun, we have another eclipse. It's weird here because it's this off sign eclipse, this eclipse that we're having at the end of March is finishing up from where when the nodes were in Aries. It's crazy because there's so much in here. So this is actually not the best example and so hard to see because Pisces and Aries are so crazy right now. But see how the sun and the moon are actually in the very early degrees of Aries here, and the node is at the very late degrees of Pisces. So this is considered an eclipse by many astrologers. It's within that orb of influence enough that it's the final little closing off sign eclipse from when the nodes were in Aries and Libra. So then a week after this, or so, a week or two, is the end of what's known as eclipse season. So let's just go back to our current chart and talk about the astrology of it. So just to be clear, eclipses come in pairs, or occasionally there's 3. If those orbs of influence are, they begin at the, if it falls just right, you can end up having 3 eclipses in a series. 2 or 3 in a group. Eclipse season begins a week or 2 before the first eclipse and ends a week or 2 after the final. And it is most potent in between the eclipses. But that whole season is very, very busy for sure. So let's just go over a few things that you can expect during eclipse season. So during that time, especially in between the eclipses, but beginning a week or 2 before and after the first one and a week or 2 after, you can expect changes. I think that eclipses it's sort of like full moons. You know how we can really, the world can sort of clock a full moon. The world sort of notices, whoa, when there's a full moon, we have more births. There might be more crime. Anyone who works in a school might tell you that a full moon is a little bit different. Maybe not anyone, but many people. And I feel like eclipses are like that times 10. If everyone was really aware of when we're having them, and it doesn't have to be visible from where you are, it can be visible somewhere in the world. But it's amazing to track the nodes through your chart. I think it's one of the first things I go to when I'm reading a chart because it's something people really relate to. We can really feel the influence of that part of our life changing, those parts of our life changing, that axis being really activated as it shifts through our chart. And then during the period of an eclipse, there often is actual activity. So I think it sort of proves astrology just a little bit too, because we really experience shifts and changes and movements during an eclipse. There's so much in astrology that's sort of an internal process. Like even right now, we are working with this Venus retrograde in Aries. And that's sort of a very like emotional, introspective, sort of relational process. It can lead to certain happenings, but nothing leads to more sort of outward changes in our life and things actually happening more than an eclipse. So during eclipse season, it can be really interesting to take notes about what happened, because the next time we have eclipses in Virgo Pisces, you might find that those themes come back. So changes is the first thing I want to say. We often do experience changes during a eclipse season. There can be sort of a strobe light effect. I heard someone once describe it that way, and that's what happens to the light during an eclipse. It goes in and out. And if you think about how it feels when you're somewhere and there's a strobe light, how it's sort of disorienting, right? Things move, or it's almost like one of those, what's it called, a jump shot? Is it not a jump shot? What's that called? Like in a horror movie when, maybe someone is really far away and then all of a sudden they're really up close, right? And it moves in space and time and it scares you. It's sort of just like a strobe light can be disorienting. That is sort of how eclipse season can feel. That's part of the metaphor, that disorienting aspect to it. But also, things are different on one side of an eclipse than the other. If you look at the beginning, what's going on in your life at the beginning of an eclipse season and what's going on in your life on the other side of an eclipse season, you'll often see some real change. And that's not true for every period of time. It tends to be a particularly busy and active period of changes, of that strobe light feeling in effect that's sort of a little bit disorienting. We see a lot happening often in the collective, things happening in the world. The world is more busy during eclipse season. So as crazy as everything has been, I would expect this only to heat up in the month ahead, and sometimes it's helpful to have that that warning, sort of that preparation. So eclipses can sort of function as a course correction if needed, but they can be a support if you're on the right course. So if you are not where you should be professionally, let's say, this might be a time where that position is eclipsed from your life, right? It can be a time where things are let go. And like I said, eclipses are often something that happens to us. So it can be a new job coming in. It can be a job going out. I'm just using work as an example, but that would be more likely if it fell in a certain part of your chart or affected certain planets. It can be anything. But my point is, if you're on the right course, the eclipse will act as a support. It helps to nudge you forward and help you make progress closer to your goal. But if you're on the wrong course, it can sort of do the opposite and course correct you, help you move from where you are to where you ought to be. So things end, that word eclipsed I used in there as well, and that's something to think about when we're thinking about eclipse season. Things or people or experiences can be sort of eclipsed during this time. They can leave. Yeah, it's very interesting to keep notes, to track, notice how things are different at the beginning than at the end. I often think that mostly astrology is just such a powerful tool for introspection. It helps us to understand. Let's look out the window for a minute before we go. Change the view.